Sarah Martinez was having what she thought was a perfectly normal Tuesday evening in her cozy living room in Austin, Texas. The autumn wind was gently rustling the oak trees outside their suburban home, and she was curled up on the familiar burgundy couch next to her 16-year-old daughter Emma, watching their favorite cooking show together. It was one of those precious moments that reminded Sarah why she cherished these quiet nights at home. Emma was scrolling through her phone with one hand while absently reaching for popcorn with the other, her dark hair falling across her face in that careless way teenagers perfected. The television cast a warm glow across the room, and Sarah felt that deep sense of contentment that comes from being exactly where you belong, with exactly the person who matters most. Then Sarah's phone rang. The sound cut through the peaceful atmosphere like a knife through silk. Sarah glanced at the screen and felt her heart skip a beat. The caller ID clearly displayed Emma, my sweet girl, with that silly photo they had taken together at the county fair last summer, both of them laughing with cotton candy in their hair. Sarah stared at the phone, then looked at Emma sitting right beside her, still focused on her own device, completely unaware that her mother's phone was supposedly receiving a call from her number. "Hi there, beautiful souls. This is Tina, and I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend a few minutes of your precious day with me. You know, I believe that sometimes the universe puts stories in our path exactly when we need to hear them. And tonight's story is one of those moments that will make you question everything you think you know about the people closest to you. I'm about to share with you a mystery that started with something as simple as a phone call, but what it revealed about one family's deepest secrets will leave you absolutely speechless. This isn't just a story about technology gone wrong or a simple misunderstanding. This is about the lengths people will go to protect the ones they love, and sometimes the devastating consequences of keeping secrets that were meant to stay buried forever. If you're someone who believes that truth always finds a way to surface, no matter how deep we try to bury it, then you need to stay with me until the very end. And hey, if this story touches your heart the way it touched mine, I'd be so honored if you'd hit that like button and consider subscribing to join our little family here. Now, let me take you back to that Tuesday evening that changed everything for Sarah and Emma Martinez. Sarah's hand trembled as she stared at the impossible scene before her. Her daughter was sitting right there, close enough to touch, yet her phone insisted Emma was calling her. For a moment, Sarah wondered if she was losing her mind. Maybe the stress from her recent promotion at the marketing firm was finally catching up with her. Maybe she needed glasses. Maybe she was having some kind of breakdown that made her see things that weren't really there. But the phone kept ringing, persistent and demanding, and the caller ID remained unchanged. "Emma, honey," Sarah said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. "Are you calling me right now?" Emma looked up from her phone with that slightly annoyed expression teenagers wore when their parents asked obvious questions. "What? No, Mom. Why would I call you? You're literally sitting right here." She held up her phone to show the screen. "See? I'm just watching TikTok videos." Sarah's throat felt dry as sandpaper. The phone continued to ring, and she found herself caught between two impossible realities. Either her phone was malfunctioning in the most bizarre way imaginable, or something much stranger was happening. Against her better judgment, Sarah answered the call. "Hello?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the sound of her own heartbeat. For a moment, there was nothing but static and the faint sound of breathing. Then, clear as day, she heard a voice that made her blood turn to ice in her veins. It was Emma's voice, but not quite Emma's voice. It sounded younger, more frightened, and filled with a desperation that Sarah had never heard from her daughter before. "Mom?" the voice said, and Sarah felt like she was falling through the floor. "Mom, I need help. I'm scared and I don't know where I am. There's a man here and he won't let me leave. Mom, please help me." Sarah's entire world tilted on its axis. She looked at Emma sitting beside her, peacefully watching videos, completely oblivious to the conversation happening inches away from her. The voice on the phone continued, growing more panicked with each word. "Mom, why aren't you answering me? I can see you, but you can't see me. I've been trying to reach you for so long. Please, Mom, I need you to remember." Sarah's hands were shaking so violently she almost dropped the phone. She stood up abruptly, causing Emma to look up with concern. "Mom, you look like you've seen a ghost. Are you okay? But Sarah couldn't answer because the voice on the phone was still talking, still pleading, still sounding exactly like her daughter, but saying things that made no sense in the context of their current reality. Sarah stumbled toward the kitchen, pressing the phone closer to her ear while trying to process what was happening. The voice that sounded like Emma continued speaking, but the words were becoming increasingly disturbing. Mom, I remember now. I remember the accident. I remember the hospital. Why did you tell everyone I was fine? Why did you pretend nothing happened? I've been trying to come back to you, but I can't unless you acknowledge what really happened that night. The real Emma followed her mother into the kitchen, her face creased with worry. Mom, seriously, you're freaking me out. Who's on the phone? You look like you're about to pass out. Sarah held up a finger, signaling for Emma to wait, but her mind was racing through possibilities that seemed to belong in a nightmare rather than her ordinary suburban life. Could someone be playing a cruel prank? Could someone have cloned Emma's voice somehow? But the voice knew things, personal things, details about their life that no stranger could possibly know. I know you remember my favorite teddy bear, Mr. Buttons, the voice continued. The one with the missing eye that I got when I was 3. I know you remember how I used to make you check under my bed for monsters every single night until I was 10. I know you remember the scar on my knee from when I fell off my bike trying to impress Tommy Henderson in 5th grade. Mom, these aren't just random facts. These are our memories, our real memories. So why are you acting like I'm not really here? Sarah felt her knees go weak. Everything the voice mentioned was absolutely accurate. Mr. Buttons was tucked away in a memory box in Sarah's closet. The monster-checking ritual had been their nightly tradition for years. The scar on Emma's knee was barely visible now, but Sarah remembered rushing her to urgent care and holding her hand while they cleaned the wound. These weren't things that could be easily researched or guessed. These were intimate family moments that only Sarah and Emma would know. The real Emma was becoming increasingly agitated. Mom, you're scaring me. Please tell me what's going on. Is someone threatening you? Should I call Dad? Sarah's ex-husband Michael lived across town with his new wife, and while their divorce had been amicable, she rarely reached out to him unless it was about Emma's schedule or school events. But maybe this was exactly the kind of emergency that warranted breaking their carefully maintained boundaries. Wait, Sarah managed to whisper into the phone. If you're really Emma, tell me something that only you and I would know, something we never told anyone else. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then the voice spoke with a sadness that seemed to echo from some deep, unreachable place. You used to sing me Rainbow Dreams every night when I couldn't sleep. It wasn't a real song from the radio or anything. You made it up just for me when I was little and had nightmares about the dark. You said the rainbow would chase away all the scary things and wrap me in colors until morning came. You haven't sung it to me in years, Mom. I miss it so much. Sarah's legs gave out completely, and she had to grab the kitchen counter to keep from falling. Rainbow Dreams was indeed a song she had created during Emma's difficult period around age 6, when night terrors kept the whole household awake. Sarah would sit by Emma's bed and sing softly about rainbows that danced through the darkness, bringing peace and safety to little girls who were afraid. She had never written down the words, never recorded it, never even hummed it in front of Michael. It was their private ritual, something sacred between mother and daughter that existed nowhere else in the world. Now, I know some of you might be thinking this sounds impossible, maybe even made up. But I want you to know that sometimes the most extraordinary things happen to the most ordinary people, and that's exactly what makes them so powerful. If this story is resonating with you, if you're feeling that little flutter in your chest that tells you something important is happening here, I would be so grateful if you'd take just a second to hit that subscribe button. I promise you, the stories I share here aren't just entertainment. They're reminders that the world is full of mysteries and miracles, and sometimes we need to open our hearts to possibilities that our minds can't quite understand. I also love reading your comments because so many of you share your own incredible experiences. And honestly, you've taught me that there are more unexplained wonders in this world than any of us could ever imagine. But right now, let's get back to Sarah, because what happened next challenged everything she thought she knew about reality itself. The real Emma was now standing directly in front of her mother, waving her hands to get Sarah's attention. Mom, look at me. You're completely zoned out and it's really freaking me out. Who are you talking to?" But Sarah was trapped between two versions of her daughter, one physical and present, the other somehow reaching her through impossible means. The voice on the phone had grown softer, almost ethereal, as if it was speaking from a great distance. "I know this is confusing, Mom. I know it doesn't make sense. But I need you to listen very carefully because I don't have much time. Do you remember the night of my 16th birthday party? The real party? Not the one you've been telling yourself happened?" Sarah's mind reeled. Emma's 16th birthday had been just 3 months ago. They had celebrated at home with a small group of friends, pizza, a chocolate cake that Sarah had ordered from Emma's favorite bakery, and a movie marathon that lasted until 2 in the morning. It had been a perfect night, full of laughter and teenage silliness, and all the joy that Sarah had hoped to give her daughter. "Of course I remember your birthday," Sarah whispered. "We had such a wonderful time. All your friends were here, and you were so happy with the necklace I gave you." But even as she said the words, something felt wrong. The memory seemed fuzzy around the edges, like trying to remember a dream that was already fading. The voice on the phone made a sound that might have been crying. "Mom, that's not what happened. That's the story you created to protect yourself from the truth. I need you to remember the real birthday, the one that ended with sirens and hospital lights and you crying so hard that the nurses had to sedate you. I need you to remember because I can't move on until you do, and I can't keep reaching out to you like this much longer." Sarah felt like she was drowning in confusion and fear. The real Emma grabbed her mother's shoulders and shook her gently. "Mom, please. You're really scaring me now. Your face has gone completely white, and you're talking to someone who isn't saying anything back. Can you hear me? Are you having some kind of medical episode?" But Sarah couldn't focus on the Emma in front of her because the voice on the phone was painting a picture that made her stomach turn to acid. "There was a car accident, Mom. Tommy Henderson was driving, and he'd been drinking even though we were only 16. I know you told me never to get in a car with anyone who had been drinking, but it was my birthday, and I wanted to feel grown up and rebellious. We were coming back from the party at Jessica's house, and Tommy missed the curve on Riverside Drive. The car flipped 3 times before it hit the tree." Sarah's vision started to blur as fragmented images flashed through her mind like broken pieces of glass. A phone call at midnight, racing to the hospital in her pajamas and bare feet. Fluorescent lights that were too bright and too cold. Doctors with grave expressions, forms to sign, decisions to make. But these images felt like someone else's memories, like scenes from a movie she had watched, but couldn't quite remember. "I was in a coma for 6 days, the voice continued. "You never left my side. You slept in that uncomfortable chair next to my bed, and you talked to me constantly because the doctor said I might be able to hear you. You sang Rainbow Dreams so many times that the nurses started humming it in the hallways. On the 6th day, I opened my eyes for just a few minutes, long enough to see you there, to squeeze your hand, to try to tell you that I loved you. And then I was gone." The real Emma was now crying, though she didn't understand why. "Mom, please, whatever's happening, we can figure it out together. You're really frightening me. Should I call 911? Should I call Dad? Please just look at me and tell me you're okay." But Sarah was lost in a flood of returning memories that her mind had apparently buried so deep that she had created an entirely different reality to replace them. She remembered now. The funeral that she couldn't bear to attend. The weeks of sitting in Emma's room, surrounded by her daughter's belongings, unable to accept that she was really gone. The gradual descent into a kind of madness that felt like mercy, because it allowed her to pretend that Emma was still alive, still coming home from school every day, still needing her mother's love and guidance and protection. "I've been trying to reach you for months," the voice on the phone said. "I've been watching you create this whole life where I'm still here, where we still watch cooking shows together, where I'm still your living, breathing daughter. I know you did it because you love me so much that you couldn't let me go. But Mom, I need you to let me go now. I need you to remember the truth so that we can both find peace." Sarah collapsed onto the kitchen floor, the phone still pressed to her ear as the carefully constructed reality she had been living in for months began to crumble around her. The Emma standing in front of her, the Emma who had been comforting her and worrying about her, began to flicker like a television with poor reception. One moment she was solid and real. The next, she was translucent, like morning mist that the sun was beginning to burn away. "No," Sarah whispered, both to the voice on the phone and to the fading image of her daughter. "No, this can't be real. You're here. You're right here. I can see you. I can touch you." She reached out desperately toward the Emma who was becoming less and less solid, but her hands passed through empty air. The voice on the phone spoke with infinite gentleness and infinite sadness. "I know this is the hardest thing you've ever had to face, Mom. I know you've been living in this beautiful dream where I never left you, where we still have all the time in the world together. But dreams aren't real life, and I can't stay in this in-between place forever. I need you to let me go so I can rest, and I need you to start living again, really living, not just existing in a fantasy that's keeping us both trapped." Sarah remembered everything now with crystal clarity that was both devastating and liberating. The accident report that she had read dozens of times, trying to make sense of how everything could change so quickly. The grief counselor who had tried to help her process the loss, but whom Sarah had stopped seeing because facing the truth felt impossible. The well-meaning friends and family members who had gradually stopped calling because Sarah's insistence that Emma was fine and living her normal life had become too concerning for them to bear witness to. She remembered Michael's desperate attempts to get her to accept reality, how he had begged her to let him help her through the grief, how he had finally given up when Sarah's delusions became so entrenched that she would show him Emma's empty bedroom and insist their daughter was just out with friends. She remembered her sister bringing food and finding Sarah setting the table for two, chatting animatedly about Emma's day at school as if nothing had changed. "The other people in the accident," Sarah managed to ask through her tears. "Tommy and the others, are they?" The voice on the phone was quiet for a moment before answering. "Tommy survived. He's in juvenile detention now, and he'll have to live with what happened for the rest of his life. Jessica was hurt pretty badly, but she recovered. I was the only one who didn't make it, Mom. I was the only one who couldn't come home." Sarah felt like her heart was being torn out of her chest all over again, but this time she didn't try to stop the pain or push it away. This time she let herself feel the full weight of losing the most important person in her world, the daughter who had been her whole life, her best friend, her greatest joy and deepest love. The Emma who had been flickering in and out of visibility was now barely a whisper of light, like a candle flame about to be extinguished by a gentle breeze. "I'm so sorry, baby," Sarah sobbed. "I'm so sorry I wasn't strong enough to face this. I'm so sorry I've been keeping you trapped here because I couldn't let you go. I don't know how to live without you. I don't know how to exist in a world where you're not part of my everyday life." The voice on the phone was growing fainter, but it carried all the love that had ever existed between them. "You're stronger than you know, Mom. You're the woman who taught me how to be brave, how to be kind, how to find joy even in difficult times. You're the woman who made up songs just for me and checked for monsters every night and kissed every scraped knee until it felt better. That woman is still inside you, and she doesn't disappear just because I'm not physically there anymore. I need you to find her again and live the beautiful life she deserves to live." Sarah looked around the kitchen that had felt so real, so normal, so full of the everyday routines that she and Emma had shared. But now she could see the truth underneath the illusion. The second plate that had been set for Emma every night for months was always left untouched. The conversations she thought they had been having were actually her talking to empty air. The homework Emma supposedly brought home was just Sarah's imagination filling in the details of a life that no longer existed. "Will I still be able to feel you sometimes?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking with the weight of final goodbyes. "Will I still be able to sense that you're okay, wherever you are?" The voice on the phone was now barely a whisper, like wind chimes moving in a breeze so soft that you had to listen very carefully to hear their music. "Love doesn't die, Mom. Love never dies. It just changes form. You'll feel me in rainbow moments, in songs that make you smile, in the kindness you show to other people who are hurting. You'll feel me when you help another mother who's lost a child, when you volunteer at the hospital where you spent so many hours with me, when you finally allow yourself to live fully again, because that's what I would want for you." The phone line was growing quieter and quieter, like a radio station drifting out of range as you drove further and further away from its signal. Sarah knew that this was goodbye, not just for now, but forever, and the finality of it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that the next step would change everything and there would be no way back to the safe, familiar ground behind her. "I love you, Emma," she whispered. "I love you more than all the stars in the sky, more than all the words in all the books ever written, more than anything that has ever existed or ever will exist. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and being your mother was the greatest privilege of my life." The voice on the phone, now barely audible, whispered back with all the warmth and tenderness that had defined their relationship from the moment Emma had entered the world. "I love you too, Mom. Thank you for giving me 16 wonderful years of life. Thank you for making every day feel like an adventure, for supporting my dreams even when they seemed impossible, for loving me unconditionally even when I was being a typical moody teenager. Thank you for being exactly the mother I needed. And thank you for finally being brave enough to let me rest. Sing Rainbow Dreams one more time, Mom. Sing it so I can carry it with me wherever I'm going next." Through her tears, Sarah began to sing the song she had created all those years ago, the melody that had comforted a little girl afraid of the dark and had become their private anthem of love and protection. Her voice was shaky and broken, but she sang about rainbows dancing through the darkness, about colors that wrapped around you like a blanket, about safety and peace, and the promise that morning always comes after the longest night. As she sang, she felt Emma's presence growing lighter and lighter, like a butterfly lifting from her hand and flying toward the sun. When the song ended, the phone line was silent except for the sound of Sarah's own breathing. She knew, with absolute certainty, that Emma was gone. Really gone this time. Not just physically absent, but truly departed, finally free to move on to whatever came next. The grief was enormous, a tidal wave that threatened to drown her, but underneath it was something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. The terrible anxiety that had been gnawing at her subconsciously, the sense that something was wrong, even when she was living in her carefully constructed denial, had finally lifted. Sarah sat on her kitchen floor for a long time, holding the silent phone and letting herself cry with a depth and honesty that she hadn't allowed herself before. She cried for Emma, for the future they would never share, for the grandchildren Emma would never give her, for the woman Emma would never become. But she also cried with gratitude for the 16 years they had shared, for the countless moments of joy and laughter and ordinary happiness that no accident could ever take away from her. You know, my dear friends, I've shared a lot of stories with you over the months we've been together, but this one feels especially close to my heart because it reminds us that love is the strongest force in the universe, stronger even than death itself. If you're listening to this and you've lost someone precious to you, I want you to know that your love for them continues to exist and matter, even when they're no longer physically present in your life. And if you're someone who's supporting a friend or family member through grief, please remember that sometimes the kindest thing we can do is simply witness someone's pain without trying to fix it or rush them through it. I'm so grateful to have you here with me, sharing these moments of vulnerability and truth. If this story has touched something deep inside you, would you consider subscribing and joining our community? We're not just viewers and creators here. We're people who believe in the power of authentic storytelling to heal and connect us. I love reading your comments, especially when you share your own experiences or tell me how these stories have impacted your life. Your voices make this channel what it is, and I'm honored to be part of your journey. Now let's see how Sarah begins to rebuild her life from this moment of profound truth and devastating grace. Over the following weeks, Sarah began the difficult process of learning how to live in reality again. The first step was calling her sister Rebecca, who lived 2 hours away in Dallas and had been estranged from Sarah since the funeral that Sarah had refused to attend. Rebecca answered on the second ring, and when she heard Sarah's voice, really heard it for the first time in months, she immediately knew something had changed. "Sarah. Oh my God, Sarah, is that really you?" Rebecca's voice was filled with hope and fear in equal measure. "You sound different. You sound like yourself again." Sarah took a deep breath and spoke the words that felt like swallowing broken glass, but were necessary for her healing. "Emma is gone, Rebecca. Our Emma is really gone, and I've been living in a fantasy because I couldn't face the truth. I need help. I need so much help, and I'm scared that I've lost so much time and hurt so many people that it might be too late to find my way back to life." Rebecca was crying before Sarah finished speaking. "It's never too late, honey. It's never too late. I'm getting in my car right now, and I'll be there in 2 hours. We're going to figure this out together, and we're going to honor Emma's memory the right way, the way she deserves." Rebecca kept her promise, arriving with groceries, cleaning supplies, and a fierce determination to help her sister reclaim her life from the grief that had nearly consumed her. Together, they went through Emma's room, not to erase her memory, but to transform it into a proper memorial instead of a shrine to denial. They packed some clothes for donation, knowing that Emma would have wanted other teenage girls to benefit from her favorite outfits. They created a memory box with her most precious belongings: Mr. Buttons, photos from family vacations, the necklace Sarah had given her for her last birthday, letters Emma had written but never sent, and the journal where she had recorded her dreams of becoming a writer someday. Sarah also called Michael, Emma's father, who had been living in his own form of torment, watching his ex-wife disappear into delusion while being powerless to help her. When Sarah called and spoke Emma's name followed by the words, "is gone," and "I remember now," Michael broke down completely. He had been carrying the weight of being the only parent who was fully present in reality, the only one who could make decisions about Emma's funeral and burial, the only one who could comfort Emma's friends and teachers and teammates when they needed to grieve. "I was so angry with you," Michael admitted during their first real conversation in months. "I was angry that you got to live in a world where she was still alive while I had to face every day knowing she was gone. But I understand now that you weren't choosing an easy path. You were just trying to survive something that felt impossible to survive." They made plans to visit Emma's grave together, something Sarah had never been able to do because acknowledging the grave would have meant acknowledging the death. The cemetery was peaceful, with tall trees that filtered the afternoon sunlight into patterns that reminded Sarah of the rainbow songs she used to sing. Emma's headstone was simple but beautiful, engraved with her name, her dates, and the words, "Beloved daughter, forever in our hearts." Sarah knelt on the grass and spoke to Emma out loud, telling her about the decision to let her go, about the love that would never fade, about the promise to live fully in honor of the girl who would never get the chance to become a woman. "I'm going to get help," Sarah said to the headstone, to the earth beneath it, to whatever part of Emma might still be listening. "I'm going to learn how to carry your memory without letting it destroy me. I'm going to find ways to help other families who are going through what we went through. I'm going to make sure your life mattered, not just to me, but to the world." A gentle breeze moved through the trees, and Sarah chose to interpret it as Emma's approval. Sarah began seeing a grief counselor who specialized in complicated mourning, the kind that happens when loss is so devastating that the mind creates alternate realities to protect itself from unbearable pain. Dr. Patricia Williams was a woman in her 50s who had lost her own son in a drowning accident and understood the specific agony of outliving your child. She didn't judge Sarah for the months of delusion, but she also didn't minimize the work it would take to build a healthy relationship with her grief. "Grief isn't something you get over," Dr. Williams explained during one of their early sessions. "It's something you learn to carry. The goal isn't to stop missing Emma or to stop wishing things had been different. The goal is to find ways to honor her memory that give your life meaning and purpose instead of keeping you trapped in a past that can't be changed." Sarah learned to sit with her emotions instead of running from them, to feel the sadness without drowning in it, to remember Emma with joy instead of only with devastating loss. 6 months after the phone call that changed everything, Sarah stood in the lobby of Austin Children's Hospital, wearing a volunteer badge and carrying a bag full of comfort items for families who were spending sleepless nights in pediatric intensive care units. She had decided to honor Emma's memory by supporting other parents who were facing their worst fears, offering practical help and emotional presence to people who were walking the same terrifying path she had walked the night of Emma's accident. The volunteer coordinator, a kind woman named Maria Santos, had initially been hesitant to accept Sarah's application, knowing her history and wanting to make sure she was emotionally stable enough for such challenging work. But Sarah's references from Dr. Williams and her obvious commitment to healing had convinced Maria to give her a chance. Sarah's first assignment was simply to sit with families, to listen when they needed to talk, and to provide practical support like bringing coffee or helping navigate insurance paperwork. Her first night on duty, Sarah met Jennifer and David Park, whose 12-year-old son had been in a bicycle accident and was fighting for his life after emergency brain surgery. Sarah recognized the hollow look in Jennifer's eyes, the desperate way she kept checking her phone as if willing it to ring with good news, the trembling hands that couldn't hold a coffee cup steady. Sarah didn't offer platitudes or false hope. Instead, she simply sat with Jennifer in the family waiting room and said, "This is the hardest thing you'll ever go through, and you don't have to be strong or positive or anything except exactly what you are right now." Jennifer broke down crying, and Sarah held her while she sobbed out her terror and helplessness. "I keep thinking about all the things I didn't say to him this morning," Jennifer whispered. "I was rushing to get him to school, and I was annoyed because he couldn't find his backpack. And the last thing I said to him was, 'Hurry up.' What if those are the last words I ever say to my son?" Sarah understood that fear in her bones, the way trauma makes you re-examine every interaction, searching for signs you missed or words you wish you could take back. "The last thing you said to him doesn't define your relationship," Sarah said gently. "He knows you love him. Children always know when they're loved, even during the ordinary moments when we're just trying to get through the day. That love is bigger than any single conversation or any moment of impatience." 3 days later, Jennifer's son woke up, and while his recovery would be long and complicated, the doctors were optimistic about his chances for a full life. Jennifer hugged Sarah before leaving the hospital, and through her tears she said, "I don't know what would have happened to me if you hadn't been here. You saved my sanity during the worst days of my life." But Sarah knew the truth was more complex. Helping Jennifer had been part of her own healing, a way of transforming her experience with loss into something that could benefit others who were suffering. Sarah also became involved with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, sharing Emma's story at high school assemblies and community events. Speaking about the accident was never easy, but she found that each time she told Emma's story, she was honoring her daughter's memory while potentially saving other families from experiencing the same devastating loss. After one particularly powerful presentation at Emma's former high school, a 16-year-old girl named Ashley approached Sarah with tears in her eyes. "I was supposed to go to a party this weekend where I knew there would be drinking," Ashley said. "I was going to go anyway because I wanted to fit in, even though I knew it was dangerous. But after hearing about Emma, I can't do it. I can't risk putting my mom through what you went through. Thank you for being brave enough to share your story. You probably just saved my life." Sarah realized that Emma's death, while tragic and senseless, had the potential to create ripples of positive change that extended far beyond their family. As the first anniversary of Emma's death approached, Sarah found herself dreading and anticipating the date in equal measure. She had learned from Dr. Williams that anniversary reactions were normal, and that the goal wasn't to avoid the pain, but to move through it consciously and with support. Sarah planned a celebration of Emma's life, inviting her friends, family members, and teachers to share memories and stories about the girl who had brought so much joy into the world during her 16 years. The celebration was held in the park where Emma had loved to go for picnics when she was little, under the same oak trees where she had played on swings and fed ducks and learned to ride her bicycle. People brought photos and flowers and stories that painted a picture of a young woman who was kind, funny, creative, and deeply loved. Sarah spoke about the phone call that had changed her life, about the months of denial that had nearly destroyed her, and about the journey back to reality that had ultimately led to a deeper appreciation for the gift of Emma's life. "Emma taught me that love doesn't end when someone dies," Sarah said to the gathered crowd. "It just transforms into something different, something that can heal and help and honor the person we've lost. I will miss my daughter every day for the rest of my life, but I will also carry her with me in every act of kindness, every moment of joy, every time I choose to live fully instead of just surviving. That's her legacy, and that's how I will keep her memory alive." As Sarah spoke, a rainbow appeared in the sky behind her, and everyone present took it as a sign that Emma was somehow still with them, still spreading her light across the world in ways both seen and unseen. That night, Sarah went home to the house that no longer echoed with phantom conversations or imaginary presence. It was quiet now, but it was a peaceful quiet rather than an empty one. She climbed the stairs to what had once been Emma's room and was now a combination memorial and meditation space, with photos and candles and the memory box that held Emma's most precious belongings. Sarah opened the box and pulled out the old teddy bear, Mr. Buttons, holding him close while she softly sang Rainbow Dreams one final time, knowing that somewhere beyond her understanding, Emma was finally at peace and that Sarah herself was ready to begin truly living again.